Welcome to Dark Story Time's bonus episode. I am your host, the Midnight Spectre, joined by my co-host,
Lady of Shadows.
And in today's episode, I want you guys to sit back and relax as we read to you some of the creepiest stories that I have found from our history. These are real experiences from real people. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Some hauntings begin with tragedy, others begin with love, faith, and the promise of something beyond the grave. This is the story of Lady Beersford and the ghost that came to keep his promise. It was the late 17th century, a time when superstition walked hand in hand with faith. In the Irish county of Tyrone, the night air was thick with the scent of rain and peat smoke. Candles guttered in draughty halls, and the great houses of the gentry still stood as lonely islands of light in a sea of darkness. At one such house, belonging to Lady McGill, two old friends had come to stay, Sir Tristram and Lady Beersford, known for their devotion to each other and for the warmth they brought wherever they went. But beneath that calm civility lay a story that would defy reason and make Lady Beersford's name whispered across Ireland for generations. Years before this haunting, Lady Beersford had been known as Nicola Sophia Hamilton. In her youth, she and her childhood friend, Lord Tyrone, had shared an unusual fascination with questions of faith. Both were thoughtful, skeptical, and deeply curious about what came after, yet they could never agree. Nicola, devout and confident in her belief, was certain that there was a world beyond this one. Tyrone, ever the rationalist, doubted it. One day, as the story goes, the two made a solemn pact. Whichever of us dies first, Tyrone said, shall return, if possible, to tell the other whether the soul indeed lives on. They sealed their promise with a handshake and went their separate ways, laughing at the folly of youthful oaths, or perhaps knowing, deep down, that it would one day matter. It was October 1693 when Lady Beersford found herself at Lady McGill's home in Tyrone. Her husband was away, and the house was quiet. As the servants retired for the night, Lady Beersford prepared for bed, unaware that the anniversary of Lord Tyrone's death was drawing near. The night was calm, no wind, no thunder, when suddenly she woke. The moonlight poured across the floorboards in a white band of light. Standing within that pale glow was a figure, tall, familiar, dressed in the fashion of a gentleman, but with a strange, colorless stillness about him. "Do not be afraid," the figure said. Lady Beersford recognized the voice instantly. It was Lord Tyrone. Her breath caught in her throat. "It cannot be you," she whispered. "You died." "I did," he answered quietly, "but our promise was not forgotten." The air around her grew cold. She tried to rise, but her body felt as if bound by invisible cords. Tyrone moved closer. "I am permitted to tell you," he said, "that there is life beyond this world. The soul does not perish, but I may not stay long, nor may I appear to you again." He told her things, private things, that no one living could have known. He spoke of her husband, her future children, the years she would live, and the date of her own death. Then, to prove that this visitation was not a dream, he reached out and touched her wrist. The pain was sharp, like a burn. When she looked down, she saw that her wrist bore a livid mark, white against the skin. "That mark," Tyrone said, "will remain as proof of what you have seen." And with that, the apparition faded, leaving only the whisper of his voice. "Remember our promise." The next morning, Lady Beersford's maid found her pale and trembling. She claimed she had been ill, and when she dressed, she bound her wrist with a black ribbon. No one saw her bare wrist again. Those close to her remarked that she seemed changed, thoughtful, often sad, but strangely serene. To her closest friends, she spoke only once about that night, saying, "I have seen what awaits after death. I am no longer afraid." Years passed. Her husband died young, as Tyrone's spirit had foretold. She remarried, bore children, and became known for her kindness and generosity, yet always the black ribbon remained. In her later years, Lady Beersford confided the full story to a clergyman. He listened with solemn attention, taking careful notes, for this was no tale of fancy to her. She described every detail: the voice, the coldness, the prophecy. She told him the date Tyrone had predicted for her death, the 16th of October, which, by her reckoning, was still months away. But time can be cruel. On the morning of October 15th, she awoke weak and feverish. Her servants urged her to rest, but she insisted on rising, saying, "I shall not die today. Tomorrow is the day appointed." By afternoon, her strength failed. She asked for her children to be brought to her bedside. Before them all, she lifted her hand, pulled away the black ribbon, and revealed the mark, still visible decades later, as white as bone against her skin. "This," she said softly, "is the proof that my friend returned as he promised." She smiled once more, and by midnight she was gone. News of Lady Beersford's death spread quickly. Servants, family, and clergymen repeated her story, and soon all of Ireland was whispering about the Tyrone ghost. The mark on her wrist was seen by several witnesses after death, though whether it was a scar, birthmark, or something beyond nature, none could tell. Historians later traced the date of Lord Tyrone's death. It matched precisely with the night Lady Beersford claimed he appeared to her. Skeptics called it coincidence, an illusion of grief, or the invention of legend. Believers saw it as undeniable proof that the veil between life and death is thinner than we imagine. The case of Lady Beersford and the Tyrone ghost has endured for more than 3 centuries, studied by both physical researchers and historians alike. Hereward Carrington, who chronicled the story in True Ghost Stories in 1915, was a member of the Society for Psychical Research. He considered the case one of the most compelling examples of an apparition of the living dead, a visitation intended not to frighten, but to confirm the existence of life after death. Parapsychologists point out that Lady Beersford's apparition included verifiable predictions and a physical manifestation, the mark on her wrist, both elements that make it stand apart from ordinary dreams or hallucinations. Whether this was a true supernatural visitation or the product of a powerful subconscious vision remains open to debate. But what cannot be denied is the depth of Lady Beersford's conviction. From that night onward, she never again expressed fear of death. Today, Lady Beersford's story still echoes through the Irish folklore. In County Tyrone, some say her spirit can be felt near the old Beersford estate, a presence not of unrest, but of watchfulness, as if she remains the guardian of a secret once shared between 2 friends. The black ribbon, the promise, the touch from beyond, they remind us that the unknown is never far away. Even in the age of science, stories like Lady Beersford's challenges us to look beyond the boundaries of what we can measure. Because perhaps, somewhere in the dark, an old friend is keeping a promise. From an Irish manor in 1693 to the pages of psychical research 200 years later, this story endures, not as proof, but as testimony. For Lady Beersford, the question of the soul's survival was answered, not by priests, not by scholars, but by the whisper of a ghost.
It began on a clear afternoon in the Pacific Northwest. A lone pilot, flying high over the Cascade Mountains, saw something impossible. What he witnessed that day would give the world a new phrase and begin a mystery that endures till this day. It was a Tuesday, June 24th, 1947. The skies over Mount Rainier, Washington were bright, clean, and cloudless. Perfect flying weather. Private pilot Kenneth Arnold, a 32-year-old businessman from Boise, Idaho, was en route to an air show in Pendleton, Oregon. He was flying a Call Air A-2 light aircraft, cruising at about 9,200 feet. His goal was simple: to locate a missing Marine transport plane that had gone down somewhere in the Cascades. He hoped to spot the wreckage or survivors, a small act of volunteerism before continuing on to his destination. By all accounts, Arnold was a reliable and level-headed pilot. He lodged hundreds of flight hours, ran his own fire control equipment, and had never once filed a strange report. That would change within the hour. At 2:59 p.m., Arnold's attention was caught by a sudden flash of light, a bright blue-white glint that cut across his cockpit window. At first, he thought it might be sunlight reflecting off another aircraft. He scanned the horizon, and that's when he saw them. 9 objects, metallic, crescent-shaped, and moving at incredible speed, flying from north to south, weaving and tilting in unison, as if part of a loose formation. Arnold estimated their altitude at roughly 9,500 feet, just above his own. They flew in a long chain, spaced out evenly, and were traveling towards Mount Adams, roughly 25 miles away. He described them later as flat, like pie pans, and said they flashed brilliantly in the sun as they tilted from side to side. He timed their movements against known mountain landmarks. The distance between Mount Rainier and Mount Adams was roughly 50 miles. And by his stopwatch, the objects covered that distance in under 100 seconds. That meant they were moving at speeds over 1,700 miles per hour, far beyond the capability of any known aircraft in 1947. Arnold's exact words to reporters later became legend. He said the objects moved like saucers skipping over water. The phrase stuck. Within 24 hours, newspaper headlines across America read, "Pilot sees flying saucers over Mount Rainier." Kenneth Arnold never used the word flying saucer himself to describe their shape. He said they were more like boomerangs or half-moons. But that one offhand comparison changed history. Within weeks, hundreds of similar reports began flooding in. The age of the UFO, the unidentified flying object, had begun. Arnold landed safely in Pendleton, Oregon, and immediately told his story to airport officials and fellow pilots. He seemed calm, logical, and even embarrassed by the attention. The next day, he was interviewed by Bill Baguette, a reporter for the East Oregonian. The story ran on the front page. Within days, wire services carried the headline nationwide. Soon, even major outlets like the Chicago Sun, New York Times, and Associated Press had picked up the tale. Public fascination erupted overnight. For some, Arnold was a hero, an honest witness reporting something the military wasn't acknowledging. For others, he was delusional, mistaken, or simply caught up in the glare of publicity. But the details he provided remained consistent. 9 discs, shining metal, moving in formation, seen with the naked eye and timed by a pilot's stopwatch. By early July 1947, the Army Air Forces, precursor to the modern U.S. Air Force, had taken notice. They dispatched intelligence officers to interview Arnold and collect his sketches and flight data. The officers noticed that he appeared credible, cooperative, and genuinely perplexed. Their internal memorandum classified his sightings as unidentified. Just days later, another reporter made global headlines: the Roswell incident, in which an alleged flying disc was recovered in New Mexico. The combination of Arnold's sighting and the Roswell story created a national sensation unlike anything before. Though Roswell would fade into rumors and secrecy, Kenneth Arnold's accounts remained the first, and in many ways the purest: a daylight sighting by a trained pilot with nothing to gain. Over the following months, Arnold gave multiple interviews. He never changed his core story. He insisted that what he saw were real, physical craft, not optical illusions. They were metallic, moving in deliberate formation, and performed maneuvers no known plane could ever achieve. He denied suggestions of hallucinations or misidentifications, saying, "I've flown for years. I know reflections, mirages, and weather balloons when I see them. These were none of those things." Arnold even purchased a small model airplane to demonstrate their motion, showing how they flipped edgewise as they moved, reflecting sunlight like a mirror at each turn. The FBI, the Army Air Forces, and even the Civil Aeronautics Administration, CAA, investigated. Their conclusion? No natural or conventional explanation could be found. The official report read simply: no known aircraft could travel at these speeds and perform these maneuvers. Case remains unidentified. Over time, skeptics have proposed various theories. Some say Arnold saw a mirage, sunlight reflecting off distant snow peaks or clouds. Others claim he mistook a flock of geese, a formation of meteor fragments, or even early jet aircraft. But Arnold's precise timing and description challenged those explanations. The objects traveled at nearly 1,700 miles per hour, yet remained visible for over 2 minutes. Far too slow for meteors, far too fast for birds or conventional planes. He also noted that the objects occasionally flipped and banked in unison, a motion unlike any atmospheric distortion. For those reasons, the Project Blue Book archives, which cataloged over 12,000 UFO cases between 1947 and 1969, continued to list the Arnold sightings as unidentified. Beyond the data and speculation lies the human element, the way one moment can change a person's life. Kenneth Arnold was a modest man. After his story broke, he found himself thrust into the public eye, interviewed on radio, swarmed by reporters, and contacted by military officials. He struggled with the attention. Friends said he became quieter, wary of mockery, yet steadfast in what he'd seen. Arnold later wrote that he regretted ever mentioning the incident, saying, "If I had known what was to come, I'd have kept my mouth shut." But despite the scrutiny, he never recanted. Until his death in 1984, Kenneth Arnold maintained his story, that he saw real, structured, physical craft, intelligently controlled, moving faster than any known technology of his time. Arnold's sightings did more than spark headlines. It changed the way humanity thought about the sky. Before 1947, flying saucers didn't exist as a cultural idea. After Arnold, they became part of modern folklore, inspiring movies, books, and scientific inquiry. The U.S. Air Force soon created Project Sign, then Project Grunge, and finally Project Blue Book, all official studies into unidentified aerial phenomena. These investigations would span decades, collecting thousands of reports from pilots, radar operators, and civilians. Yet, through all that time, the Arnold case remained the first and best documented of its kind. Even today, scientists revisit Arnold's data. By reconstructing his flight path, time of day, and reported angles, They've attempted to calculate whether any known astronomical event or reflection could explain it. Most studies conclude that no such natural phenomena matches these details. The sunlight reflection theory, that Arnold saw glints from distant planes, fails because no aircraft were scheduled in that air corridor. Weather balloon explanations don't account for the coordinated movements of 9 separate objects. In 2021, the U.S. Department of Defense publicly confirmed renewed investigations into unidentified aerial phenomena. Even modern radar data cannot dismiss many such incidents. In that sense, Kenneth Arnold's report feels less like an anomaly and more like a beginning. Later years, Arnold wrote a book titled The Coming of the Saucers, co-authored with Raymond Palmer, 1952. In it, he described his lingering sense of awe, not fear, but wonder, at what he had witnessed. He said, "I am convinced that these objects were of controlled origin and that they were machines, operated by beings of some kind, not products of our Earth." He did not claim aliens, nor invoke religion or mysticism. He simply said they were real and beyond explanation. For a man of practical temperament, that conclusion carried weight. Even skeptics admit if Kenneth Arnold fabricated or imagined what he saw, he maintained that illusion for nearly 40 years, never altering his details, never seeking fame or money. The term flying saucer has since become a cliche, a symbol of Cold War paranoia, science fiction, and late-night talk shows. But in 1947, it represented something purer, a moment when the world was forced to confront the possibilities that our skies might not belong solely to us. Arnold's story inspired countless others to come forward, from airline pilots to military radar operators. His simple sighting became a cultural inflection point, the spark that ignited both belief and skepticism in equal measure. More than 70 years later, government programs declassified reports, and even the Pentagon's own investigations still echo that original question: what did Kenneth Arnold see that day? In the decades since 1947, technology has advanced beyond Arnold's wildest imaginations. Yet, no definitive answer has ever been found. Perhaps he glimpsed experimental aircraft, decades ahead of his time. Perhaps it was a rare, atmospheric event. Or perhaps, just perhaps, it was something that didn't belong to this earth at all. What we know for certain is this. One clear afternoon over Mount Rainier, a single man looked to the horizon and saw something no one could explain. That vision, brief, brilliant, and utterly inexplicable, changed the way we looked at the sky forever. History remembers him as the first modern witness, the man who gave us the phrase that would define a phenomenon, and who reminded us that sometimes the sky still holds secrets.
They say that some beds do not merely give rest, some beds remember. Some beds hold the weight of what cannot be seen. In the late 19th century, in the outskirts of London, there stood a modest inn, an unassuming building of wood and plaster, glass lamps flickering by cobblestone streets, horses stamping in the rain-drenched yards. Walk past its facade in daylight, and you notice nothing remarkable, but cross the threshold at twilight and hear the hush of voices, the creak of floorboards, and you might discover something far more unsettling. This is the story of a bed that did more than cradle weary travelers, a bed that bore the invisible weight of fear. It was a cold evening in November, a gentleman, unnamed in Stead's account, arrived at the inn, seeking shelter for the night. He was alone, travel-worn and anxious to rest. Nothing in his manner suggested that he believed in ghosts or supernatural. He chose a small second-floor room, room 7, simple but clean. A narrow window looked out over the yard, its frame rattled with the wind. The innkeeper smiled, offered a chambermaid service, and left him on his own devices. After a light supper, the guest retreated to the bed. He read for a short while by candlelight, listened to the rain tapping on the window, then extinguished his lamp. Night settled. Darkness pooled around the edges of the ceiling. In the hour after midnight, the guest awoke. His chest felt heavy, a weight pressing, unseen, upon him. He tried to sit up. The bed was firm, the pillow in place, the sheets undisturbed. Yet the pressure persisted. It was as though something invisible had settled upon his torso, pinning him down. A cold breeze whispered across his skin. Though the window was closed, he dared not open his eyes, fearful that they might reveal something inhuman. Hours passed like that, laboring breath, heart pounding, every nerve alive to terror. At last, he reached out. His hand moved slowly, trembling, across the blanketed darkness toward the source of the pressure. His fingers touched something, cold, solid. Not fabric, not wood, not anything constructed. Something else, a presence. He recoiled, startled by the contact, but found his hand remained there, resting upon the unknown. Silence followed. Then soft, rustling fabric, faint and rhythmic, like wings or whispering silk. And then, nothing. Just the stillness again, heavier now for its earlier stirrings. When dawn finally came, the guest sat upright, gasping for air. He peered at his bed. The sheets were smooth, the pillow in perfect place, no disturbance of any kind, nothing to explain what had pressed upon him, what had brushed his hand in the dark. He dressed hastily, disturbed beyond rest. At breakfast, the landlord was polite but uneasy. Others who had stayed in the same room reported similar experiences. Some said they felt watched. Some heard footsteps overhead. Others, cold hands in the darkness. But no one spoke openly of ghosts, except the traveler, who thanked the innkeeper, paid his dues, and departed with wide eyes and pale cheeks. William T. Stead, editor, writer, and investigator, collected this account among many in his 1891 compendium, Real Ghost Stories. Stead did not invent names where he could avoid it. Many narrators remained anonymous, yet he recorded their experiences with a seriousness rare in popular ghost literature. Stead's interest was not sensational. He wished to understand, to document. For him, phenomena like the haunted bed were not unnatural curiosities, but testimonies of the human condition, fear, faith, the blurred boundary between waking and dreaming. What can explain such an experience? Sleep paralysis? A well-known phenomenon. In modern psychiatry, sleep paralysis is understood as the temporary state between sleeping and waking when the mind is conscious, but the body remains paralyzed. Pressure on the chest, a sense of weight, the feeling of being pinned are among its hallmark symptoms. Hypnopompic or hypnagogic hallucinations, visions, sounds, or tactile sensations that arise just before falling asleep or just after waking. The brain, in transition, misassigns internal stimuli to external causes. Psychological suggestion. Travelers arriving at an inn in an unfamiliar place late at night, their minds already alert to fear, perhaps influenced by local tales or the latent superstition of the age. And finally, environmental causes. Drafts, floorboards creaking, roof timbers shifting, cold spots, uneven bed frames, all could contribute to sensations that seem otherwise impossible. But in Stead's collection of testimonies, these common explanations often fall short. The weight that could not be removed, the solid touch in the darkness, repeated experiences by different persons all suggest something beyond mere physiology. In the same room over succeeding seasons, other guests reported similar phenomena. A young woman staying in room 7 said she awoke to hear someone walking beside the bed, her carpet slippers tapping softly. Another man felt the sheet tug at his ankle, though no one else was in the room. Several mentioned feeling watched, even though in broad daylight the room appeared empty, orderly, and ordinary. Stead's account emphasizes that the disturbances occurred mainly after midnight, often in the intervals between sleep and fully awake consciousness. Many describe the presence as gentle, not malicious, more uninvited companion than malevolent force. None claimed visible apparition, only tactile and auditory disturbance, touch in the dark, the oppressive silence, shadows that refuse to take shape. To a Victorian audience, such stories occupied a strange crossroads between folklore, spiritualism, and scientific curiosity. Seances, mediums, and ghost stories were popular, yet many intellectuals believed in a scientific approach. Record, compare, test. Stead and his peers sought to collect witnesses, note consistency, and classify phenomena. In this way, the haunted bed is more than a ghost story. It is a case study, a data point in the larger question: do we share our world with things unseen? Imagine laying down your head, expecting rest, only to be met with pressure and presence. The mind races. Is it real? Is it imagined? For many, sleep is refuge. For others, it is a battleground. The guest in this story, like many before and since, was torn between fear and rationality. He knows his senses may deceive him. He knows the night plays tricks. Yet, he cannot erase what he felt: the solid touch, the oppressive quiet, the dread that crept in with the darkness. Even today, as we draw the sheets tight and dim the lights, the notion of the haunted bed continues to stir our curiosity. Modern researchers document sleep paralysis. Ghost hunters investigate rooms that resist explanation. Psychologists study how our minds construct dream, memory, and fear. Still, in thousands of reports, certain features recur: pressure, touch, absence of visible entity, midnight hour, the uncanny sensation of being watched. The Old Inn in London, Room 7, remains in these stories a microcosm of that experience, a place where the threshold between natural and supernatural feels thin. What can we conclude? Perhaps that the story of the haunted bed is less about proving ghosts and more about recognizing the limits of our senses, how little we truly perceive and how much we confer meaning upon absence. Perhaps the haunted bed is a mirror, reflecting our fears, our mortality, our longing for comfort in darkness. Perhaps it is both natural phenomena and spiritual riddle, because human experience often occupies both. In a small inn under London's gaslit skies, a man awoke to the weight of invisible sorrow. He felt something sit beside him in the dark, touched by something neither flesh nor bone. No name to haunt him, no face to fear, only the knowledge that some nights are not meant for rest. Whether born of marrow, mind, or something beyond, the haunted bed reminds us: in every still room, every subtle draft, the unknown lingers, and in the deepest of darkness, there are stories that will not let sleep claim us. Thank you for joining us. I am your host, the Midnight Spectre, with my co-host,
Lady of Shadows.
and as always, remember to leave a light on.